Many in the entertainment industry loved Tupac Shakur, but people saw him in two ways. Some thought of him as an innovator and a trailblazer, while others believed he was always caught up in troubles. Through the chaos, Tupac found his people, friends who stood by him when the world was spinning. These weren't just acquaintances, they were brothers, notorious bosses, warrior turned enemy in the struggle. In this video, we will look at 5 of his closest affiliates. Suge Knight. Marion Knight Jr., also known as Suge Knight, has a notorious and fearsome reputation. He was known for founding Death Row Records, a major hip-hop label in the 90s. In the beginning, Suge was a sweet kid, affectionately called Sugar Bear by his mom. But as he grew into a 6'2", 250-pound giant, that sweetness seemed to evaporate. He traded it for aggression, arrogance, and possibly a dash of instability. Instead of using clever business strategies, he often resorted to using force to get his way. Eventually, people stopped using his childhood nickname, Sugar Bear. Those who knew him from a young age remember how he used to intimidate wealthy kids at school into handing over their lunch money. He then went on to have a brief career in professional football before becoming a celebrity bodyguard, notably for musician Bobby Brown. Suge Knight realized that real wealth was in owning music, which led him to create a record company with Dr. Dre from the famous rap group NWA. They ended Dre's contract with Eazy-E, the owner then, by making threats. They started Death Row Records, and the label took off. But so did the violence and controversies surrounding Suge Knight. In 1995, Tupac Shakur signed with Death Row Records, and shortly before that, Suge paid his $1.4 million bail when he faced charges related to sexual assault. The following are stories of some lucky individuals who survived confrontations with Suge Knight, which often turned violent. In the early days of Death Row Records, Dr. Dre invited aspiring rappers Linwood and George Stanley for a recording session. Little did Linwood know he'd mistakenly used a phone intended for a powerful drug kingpin named Harry O, who was funding Death Row Records. Suge Knight stepped in, politely asking Linwood not to use the phone, but Linwood wasn't in the mood for pleasantries, replying with a curt, "Don't be coming at me with all that gangbang shit. I'm not from LA. Big mistake." In response, Suge pulled out a gun, forced the artists to strip to their underwear, and brutally beat them. He took their IDs to prevent them from reporting the incident. Despite the terrifying ordeal, Linwood and George Stanley went to the police after their release. Suge Knight tried a bizarre tactic to avoid legal trouble. He offered a record deal to the prosecuting attorney's daughter in exchange for a lighter sentence. As a result, prosecutor Larry Longo got the boot, and Suge got away relatively unscathed. There was a similar incident with Happy Walters 3 years later. Happy David Walters was a big deal in the hip-hop scene of the early and mid-90s. He looked after artists like RZA, House of Pain, and Cypress Hill, and had a major influence on the music industry. Walters was also a co-owner of Immortal Records and released well-received albums, including the Judgment Night soundtrack. Walters suddenly disappeared without a trace. He was last seen taking money from an ATM in Los Angeles and was gone for 48 hours. A missing persons report was filed. When he was found in Long Beach, he had bruises, burns from cigars, and a freshly shaved head. Walters said he couldn't remember where he was during his disappearance, but connecting the dots, many suspected Suge was involved. Suge Knight wanted to sign RZA, one of Happy Walters' clients, for his new record label extension, Death Row East. Walters had also made fun of Knight on the Judgment Day soundtrack. These things made people think Knight might have had something to do with what happened to Walters. Not surprisingly, Walters let RZA go from his contract and moved away from the hip-hop business. He went on to do well in the entertainment world, especially as the owner of Catalyst Sports and Media. In the 90s, there was a big feud between Suge Knight's Death Row Records and Puff Daddy's Bad Boy Records. But when Mark Anthony Bell, who worked for Bad Boy Records, went to the Death Row Christmas party in 1995, it seemed like he didn't know about this rivalry. At the party, Suge Knight asked Bell for Puff Daddy's home address. Bell said no, and things got scary. Suge and some other people took Bell upstairs, where he endured something called the Death Row treatment. Bell endured beatings with champagne bottles and was made to drink urine because he wouldn't tell where Puff Daddy lived. He thought about calling the police, but waited a few days. Eventually he did, report it, and Suge Knight paid him $600,000 to settle the matter. Years later, on the Showtime series American Dream, American Nightmare, Suge Knight admitted to the whole ordeal. Sam Snead is another unfortunate person who suffered at the hands of Suge Knight. He was a producer at Death Row Records, and he occasionally dabbled in rapping. He faced a tough situation when Dr. Dre left the label to start his own. Suge Knight, who was unhappy about Dre leaving, encouraged his artists to wage musical warfare against Dre. One night at Monty's Steakhouse, Sam Snead was pressured to stop supporting Dr. Dre. Snead had already upset Suge and Tupac because he had too many East Coast rappers in his music video for Lady Heroin. When Snead refused to label Dr. Dre as homosexual, a notion Suge wanted his artists to endorse, he was subjected to a violent assault right in the restaurant. To make matters worse, they made Snead sit at their table without letting him clean up after being beaten up. He sat there, looking rough and messy. After that horrifying experience, Sam Snead decided he'd had enough of Death Row Records. He lost his first album, which never saw the light of day, but decided to keep away from the troubled atmosphere at the record label. Today, Sam Snead is still working as a hip-hop producer. He's probably just thankful that he escaped the madhouse at Death Row Records with his sanity intact. Suge Knight was violent toward women too. He hurt his ex-wives like Sharitha Golden, who got a restraining order against him in 1987, and Michelle Toussaint, whose jaw he dislocated. In 2008, Suge Knight attacked his girlfriend at the time, Melissa Isaac, while they were at a strip club. A simple phone call to his cell phone made him very angry, and he brutally attacked her, knocking her out. Witnesses say he even kicked her in the head and stripped her before taking off. The police arrested Suge later that night. They charged him not only with assault, but also with possession of drugs. Isaac went missing on the day she was supposed to testify against Knight, which made people think he might have made her disappear. But later, she came back and said Suge convinced her to skip the court date. Once more, Suge Knight avoided getting in trouble for his violent acts. Suge Knight continued to be violent, which made people wonder if he had some connection with the police since he kept avoiding serious legal consequences. Today, Suge Knight serves a 28-year sentence for murder, and he believes that due to his recurring health problems, he may spend the rest of his life behind bars. In 2018, he wasn't allowed to attend his mom's funeral. His fall from power and infamy starkly contrasts the era when he ruled the hip-hop scene with an iron fist. Besides Suge, the rest of Tupac's affiliates are generally peaceful and amazing people. Let's look at some of them. Yaki Gaddafi. Yafiu Fula, also known as Yaki Gaddafi or Tha Prince, had an extraordinary life rooted in a legacy of activism and social justice. Born on October 9, 1977 in New Jersey, it was clear from the get-go this kid was destined for greatness. His parents, Yasmin Fula and Sekou Odinga, were deeply involved in their community and dedicated to fighting for truth, peace, and justice. So it's no surprise that young Yaki inherited a fighting spirit as part of his genetic package. Now, to truly grasp the legacy he carried, you've got to dig into the family tree. On his mom's side, he hailed from the Harrison Martin clan in New Jersey. Great-grandma Delia Harrison Martin was no slouch. She'd been in the trenches fighting for human rights since way back in the 1920s. Her whole life was dedicated to fighting for equality and respect for black people. She supported important causes like women's suffrage, community affairs, voter registration, and civil rights. Yaki's parents, especially his father Sekou Odinga, played significant roles in shaping America's future for black people. Sekou was a leader in the Black Panther Party in the Bronx. He was also involved in important movements like Malcolm X's OAL. You could say he was one of the heroes pushing for the freedom and independence of African Americans in America. During a turbulent time, both President Nixon and J. Edgar Hoover brought out their COINTELPRO program to try and squash the Black Panthers' activities, which were closely watched by the FBI. Because of this, many members of this resistance, including Sekou, faced increasing persecution and had to seek safety in other countries. Yaki's family's connection with the Shakurs wasn't all politics and protests. It was a genuine bond that started during the Panther trial in 1969. And let's not forget their post-trial community work. Sekou Odinga jetted off to Algeria during the trial, and Tupac's mom, Afeni Shakur, represented herself in court while pregnant with him. In 1971, they all celebrated when the trial ended with a not guilty verdict, the longest trial in New York's history. Yaki's mother, Yasmin, also faced legal problems in 1981. She was called to testify in a grand jury after the Brink bank robbery in New York, which resulted in the arrests of activists from various groups. This included the Black Liberation Army and the Weather Underground. They were targeted using the RICO statute. Yasmin chose not to testify and was sentenced to 18 months in jail when Yaki was 4 years old. Yaki's life wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. He had to bear the pain of family separations, especially when his father Sekou got sentenced to 60 years in the 1985 Brinks trial. Why? They said he was a political prisoner, guilty of connections to the Black Liberation Army and for helping Assata Shakur make a daring escape from prison. Yaki never got to see his father again. Yaki grew up in East Orange, New Jersey, and later attended Washington Elementary School before transferring to Montclair, New Jersey. Montclair had rich neighborhoods close to New York, but it also had segregation with wealthy folks in Upper Montclair and others in regular Montclair. The town's social and educational structures were designed to keep things the way they were, but little Yaki was having none of it. His rebellious spirit and a strong sense of justice were apparent even at a young age. Standing up for kids getting a raw deal on the playground was his jam, even if it got him in trouble with the school and the authorities. As he navigated his formative years in New Jersey and New York, he had a sidekick, a mentor, and an older brother in Tupac Shakur, who was 6 years his senior. Tupac was a natural teacher, organizer, and planner, and Yaki was a loyal comrade on Tupac's side. When Tupac was in prison for a sexual assault charge, Yaki visited him very frequently. Tupac, acting like a father figure, was the one who made decisions and provided for this family. In 1995, Tupac and Yaki joined forces to create the album All Eyes on Me. The bond between them became even stronger. Tupac not only served as a constant presence in Yaki's life, but also taught him many things. Even Even though Yaki was rebellious, their relationship was highly cherished. In March 1995, Yaki appeared on Tupac's album Me Against the World. Later that year, in 1995, they formed a group called Outlaw Immortals, later known as the Outlaws. The group also included Young Hollywood, Napoleon, Castro, and Edi Tupac gave the members nicknames based on leaders who resisted America. Yaki's nickname, Gaddafi, was inspired by the Libyan colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi. In February 1996, Tupac released a double album called All Eyes on Me, and Yaki was featured on some of its songs. They also released the famous diss track Hit 'Em Up. Alongside this song, the Outlaws released their first music video. Then in November 1996, Tupac released another album titled The Don Illuminati, The 7-Day Theory, which had Yaki on multiple songs. Tupac had plans to make music for the group through his new company, Euthanasia, and he hired Yaki's mother to manage it. Sadly, Yaki saw Tupac's murder when it happened on September 7, 1996, in Las Vegas. He was in the car behind Tupac during the shooting and was willing to assist the authorities in identifying the shooter. On November 10, 1996, Yaki Gaddafi was shot in the head and found in a hallway in Orange, New Jersey. He died, and his murder remained a mystery for years. Nobody knew what happened until Napoleon talked about it in an interview in 2000. Napoleon revealed that his cousin Roddy accidentally shot him while they were playing with a gun, and they were high and drunk at the time. Yaki Gaddafi's mother, Yasmin Fula, didn't believe the explanation that her son's shooting was accidental. She insisted that Roddy had murdered her son and was very certain it wasn't accidental. The conflict grew when she accused Napoleon of not being truthful about the incident to protect his cousin. Despite these difficulties, she was determined to get justice for her son. She thought the Las Vegas police exploited her son's death by falsely claiming he was the only witness to Tupac's shooting. She argued that the police didn't properly follow leads or investigate the case. In 2017, Yasmin Fula published a book called Spirit of an Outlaw, The Untold Story of Tupac Amaru Shakur and Yaki Gaddafi Fula. This book contains over 200 images that reveal the deep connection between Yaki Gaddafi and Tupac. Yaki Gaddafi's life was defined by his close friendship with Tupac, his music career with the Outlaws, and the sad way he died. People who knew and loved him still remember him through his music and stories. The Notorious B.I.G. Unless you know their histories well, the fact that Tupac and the Notorious B.I.G. were once friends might surprise you. Let's look at their lives before fame strained their friendship. As of 1993, Tupac was already a famous rapper with a platinum album and lots of success. During this time, Biggie was relatively unknown, trying to make it big with help from Puff Daddy's mentorship. Interestingly, their paths crossed, and they formed a deep friendship. They were both known for their aggressive and clever lyrics in their songs, but they had very different personalities off stage. Biggie, despite his shyness, channeled his emotions and tackled sensitive issues through his music, revealing his inner struggles. It was this vulnerability that made him an extraordinary artist. Their friendship was marked by shared interests, rich conversations, and learning from each other. It contributed to their rise in the music industry, adding depth and mystery to their personas. Not that Tupac directly tutored him, but when you're around someone experienced, you naturally start picking up things from them without formal teaching. Biggie learned little things, and Pac was there with answers if he had questions. For a young rapper who doesn't have much experience yet, it is only natural for the Notorious B.I.G. to soak in every insight from someone as influential as Tupac. Remember that Tupac was already highly regarded as one of the greatest of all time, with a platinum album to his name. The difference in experience between these two at that time was significant. During those years, Tupac and Biggie shared moments beyond music. They were more than pals. They were brothers, united by a passion for music and a profound connection. Tupac even developed a genuine bond with Biggie's family, often calling and conversing with Biggie's mother. Tupac would journey to Brooklyn to chill with Biggie, Lil Cease, and Lil Kim, sharing smokes and good times on the streets. However, there came a pivotal moment when Biggie considered a significant change. He floated the idea of having Tupac as his manager, blending their personal and professional relationships. Tupac, aware of Biggie's potential, encouraged him to stay with Diddy's management, assuring him that stardom was on the horizon. Unfortunately, things didn't go so well for them shortly after this. On September 13, 1994, something interesting happened in history. On that day, President Clinton signed a law called the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act. This law was a big deal because it significantly impacted how crime was dealt with in the United States. At the same time, Biggie Smalls released his first album, Ready to Die. These two events happening on the same day were just a coincidence, but some people see it as a lucky and interesting occurrence, like a happy accident. They think Biggie's album was a powerful response to the difficult crime bill. The book It Was All a Dream, Biggie and the World That Made Him, written by Justin Tinsley, delves into the life and impact of Biggie. The book delves into Ready to Die as a narrative of a young black man's coming of age in Brooklyn. It's a powerful depiction of life's hardships in neighborhoods like these. Biggie's early years were marked by financial struggles, driving him to deal drugs on street corners. It was during long car rides from New York to the Carolinas for these activities activities that he honed his lyrical skills. Tinsley notes that anyone who heard Biggie recognized his extraordinary talent. Biggie's unique abilities as a rapper were evident to all who listened to him. His lyrics, storytelling prowess, and magnetic delivery set him apart. Tinsley believes Biggie's purpose extended beyond mere existence. He was destined to create music. Ready to Die marked Biggie's debut. Released when he was just 22 years old, it tragically became the only album he would release during his lifetime. Back to his story with Tupac, everything seemed calm and friendly at first, but outside pressures caused their friendship to go sour. Biggie's album quickly became one of the best-selling records in music. This marked the high point of his career as he became a rap superstar. It was also around this time that the famous East Coast versus West Coast rivalry heated up, with Tupac and Biggie right in the middle of the tension. Predictably, this strained their friendship and made it unstable. On November 30th, 1994, Tupac was supposed to work on a music project with East Coast artists Little Sean and Booker. They had promised to pay him $7,000 for his part in their album. While Pac and his group were there, they were suddenly attacked by masked individuals who shot him 5 times all over his body, including his head. It's almost like a miracle that he survived and managed to escape by taking an elevator. He ended up on a floor where Biggie and Puffy were having a party. Tupac blamed Biggie and Diddy for this incident, and it marked the end of the friendship between them. Around the same time as Tupac's eventual murder, Biggie also experienced a life-altering car accident. The accident left him with a broken leg and the knowledge that he would require a cane for the rest of his life. Unfortunately, the rest of his life won't be long because on March 8th, 1997, there was a gathering after the Soul Train Awards organized by Vibe and Quest Records at the Peterson Automotive Museum. People like Aaliyah, Faith Evans, and members of the Crips and Bloods gangs attended. However, because there were too many people and it was breaking fire safety rules, the event ended early at around 12:30 a.m. Not wanting to stay, Biggie and his associates left in 2 GMC Suburban vehicles to return to their hotel. He sat in the front passenger seat with Lil Cease and Damian D-Rock Butler while G-Money drove. Diddy, on the other hand, chose to stay in another vehicle with his bodyguards. The 2 vehicles were followed by a Chevrolet Blazer, which was driven by Bad Boy security head Paul Alford. Late at night, around 1 a.m., a dark Chevy pulled up next to Biggie's SUV. The person driving the Chevy rolled down his window, and without hesitation, he fired shots into Biggie's car, hitting it 4 times. After being shot, his friends rushed him to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, but despite the doctor's efforts, he sadly passed away a little after 1:15 a.m. What often gets missed when we talk about Tupac and Biggie is how young they were. They were just 24 and 25 years old when all the drama happened. Their impact goes beyond just hip-hop. It's part of our culture. Their stories are like modern legends that connect with people of all ages. But it's important to remember they were only 25 when they passed away. Hussein Fatal. Hussein Fatal was a close friend of Tupac Shakur and a member of the Outlaws. Born as Bruce Edward Washington Jr. on April 3, 1973 in Montclair, New Jersey, his life story is as intriguing as his name. He grew up alongside Yaki Gaddafi, who had a strong bond with Tupac. Hussein Fatal and Gaddafi were known to be best friends. Given limited opportunities, they hustled to get by. One day, Gaddafi revealed his close connection to Tupac to Hussein Fatal. At first, Hussein thought it was a joke, but he later saw it himself. According to Hussein Fatal's sister Sarah in an interview, Hussein got to meet Tupac when Tupac was in jail. Gaddafi's mom used Gaddafi as a messenger to tell Fatal that Tupac wanted to meet him. They had a meeting, and Tupac wanted to create a group called the Outlaws after getting out of jail. Originally, Gaddafi and Fatal were to be the founding members, but this changed, and there were 10 original members, including Tupac, Hussein Fatal, Gaddafi Castro, Napoleon, and more. In February 1996, Tupac released his most successful album, All Eyes on Me. Hussein Fatal appeared on tracks like All About You with Snoop Dogg and Gaddafi, and he was also part of the song When We Ride from that album. Now, if you're wondering why they chose the name Hussein Fatal, it's said to remind people of Saddam Hussein, the then Iraqi president. In June 1996, Fatal was part of Tupac's song Hit 'Em Up, where they dissed Tupac's rivals. He also appeared in the song Hail Mary from Tupac's album Machiavelli, which came out on November 5th, 1996, after Tupac's death. Now, it's rumored that Suge Knight wanted to sign Fatal and the Outlaws to his label, but Tupac wasn't having it. The word on the street was that Tupac was planning to start his own record label and make the Outlaws the flagship group. So Fatal wasn't just a sidekick, he was part of Tupac's master plan. Fatal became very close to Tupac. Allegedly, when Fatal and Gaddafi acted too wild, Tupac would send them back to New Jersey, but he would always bring them back. There's also an alleged incident at the House of Blues concert where Hussein Fatal was caught trying to bring a gun inside. There's even a story about Fatal accidentally crashing Tupac's new car. Through all the ups and downs, it was clear that there was a whole lot of love and respect between Fatal and Tupac. They had each other's backs. In an interview, Hussein Fatal's sister, Sarah, mentioned that, as far as she understood, Tupac planned to step back from his current record deal to give himself time to handle other matters. Once he sorted those out, he intended to get them a better record deal. Sarah explained that Tupac had advised Fatal not to sign with any other record labels, and only Hussein, Fatal, and Gaddafi followed this advice. The others went ahead and signed with different labels. On the other hand, Fatal remained loyal and didn't sign with anyone else. On September 7, 1996, Tupac Shakur was shot in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas, Nevada. Fatal had a court date on the East Coast, so he wasn't in Las Vegas when Tupac was shot. The news of Tupac's death hit him hard. He believed that things might have turned out differently if he had been there. What ifs are the toughest pills to swallow. Tragically, Fatal's loss didn't end there. Just 2 months later, he also lost Gaddafi. Rumor has it that Gaddafi was shot by one of the outlaw's own cousins. It's believed to be Napoleon's cousin Roddy who pulled the trigger. Roddy ended up serving 7 years in the slammer for a homicide. After losing Tupac and Gaddafi within just 2 months, Fatal took a break from rapping. He said he was content just being around Tupac when he was alive. Some months later, people from his neighborhood tried to help him get a record deal. He eventually got a solo deal. In 1997, Fatal became a father when his first daughter was born, and he was offered a contract with Relativity Records in late 1997. He accepted it, and they released his first single, Every Day, on March 17, 1998, followed by his first full album, In the Line of Fire, on March 31st. Later, he signed with Rap-A-Lot Records and released his second solo album, Death Before Dishonor. Before his arrest in December 1999 for an assault that happened 3 years earlier, he managed to record over 40 songs. In 1999, Death Row Records released Still I Rise, an album that Tupac and the Outlaws collaborated on. Reportedly, they replaced Fatal's parts with those of other members. In 2003, Fatal was part of Ja Rule's album Blood in My Eye. He featured in 4 songs: The Life, It's Murder Freestyle, The Rap Freestyle, and the title track Blood in My Eye. He also appeared in the remix of Ashanti's Rain on Me and Ja Rule's Clapback music video. He later started his label, Thugtertainment, and released several mixtapes. In 2010 and 2011, he collaborated with other outlaws on a mixtape. He also appeared on Young Noble's 2012 album, Son of God, in the songs Emancipation and Welcome to Real Life. Hussein Fatal started writing a book about his life, titled Journey with an Outlaw, which was later released by his family in 2019. Sadly, on July 10, 2015, he died in a car accident on a Georgia freeway in Banks County at 42. He was a passenger in a black Dodge Challenger driven by Zanetta L. Yearby when the vehicle crashed around 2:30 a.m. Allegedly, he was thrown from the car. After the accident, the Georgia State Patrol charged Zanetta with several offenses, including failure to stay in her lane (DUI), not having proof of insurance, first-degree homicide, and reckless driving. Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg and Tupac Shakur were important figures in the 90s rap scene. Their music styles differed. Snoop had a laid-back sound, while Tupac had raw, gritty beats. However, they both found success alongside Dr. Dre at Death Row Records. They showcased their musical chemistry when Snoop was featured on Tupac's Two of America's Most Wanted. This connection continued after Tupac's passing, as Snoop performed with a holographic Tupac at the 2012 Coachella Festival. Their relationship went beyond the professional. They considered each other like brothers. In a touching moment, Snoop inducted Tupac into the Rock and Amp Roll Hall of Fame in 2017 and sang their memorable duet. Snoop Dogg is a name synonymous with the love of cannabis, but he was not always the iconic smoker we know today. In fact, his affinity for the green herb was kindled by none other than Tupac Shakur. This crucial moment in Snoop's life happened at a rap party for the movie Poetic Justice in Los Angeles. During Tupac's posthumous induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Snoop later revealed that Tupac passed him his first joint that night. The audience found it surprising, and there was laughter and cheers, as many assumed Snoop was already a big fan of cannabis culture. But as Snoop emphasized, Tupac indeed initiated him into smoking blunts. Snoop Dogg's music career is hard to ignore. He's been incredibly successful in gangster rap and hip-hop, and his influence is felt worldwide. He started with vinyl records and now embraces digital streaming. He's adapted to changing trends and remains impactful in the industry. While he's had his share of controversies, Snoop has significantly impacted the global music scene and set high standards for aspiring rappers. His biography reveals that his journey to the top wasn't easy. He used to be deeply involved in a street gang before completely changing his life. Now, he enjoys a successful and extravagant lifestyle with a net worth of $150 million. Snoop Dogg has had a difficult relationship with the police and openly acknowledges his past gang affiliations, particularly with the Rollin' 20s Crips gang in Eastside Long Beach, which he joined during his youth. This led to legal problems that began during his high school years. When he was younger, Snoop faced multiple drug-related arrests, which landed him in jail several times. Interestingly, during these times in jail, he turned to music to express himself and his life experiences. He started creating music with his cousin Nate Dogg and friend Warren G, and their work caught the attention of Dr. Dre. Snoop Dogg's career took off with the support of Dr. Dre. His personal experiences, including a criminal past, added to his appeal and contributed to his successful rap career. His lyrics mixed street life references with stories about marijuana use, painting vivid pictures of various aspects of life. In 1993, Dr. Dre himself produced Snoop Dogg's debut solo album, Doggy Style, which featured hit singles like Who Am I and Gin and Juice. This album quickly rose to the top of the Billboard hip-hop charts and even claimed the #1 spot on the top 200 charts. With ongoing support from Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg became a major force in the music industry. His subsequent albums continued to win the hearts of fans and achieved record-breaking success. His 1996 album, The Dogfather, also reached the #1 spot. Despite his immense fame, Snoop Dogg diversified his career into various other areas. He's left an enduring impact with his unique musical style that continues to captivate millions worldwide to this day. Even though he had a successful career, he faced some tough times. In 1990, he was charged with cocaine possession, and 3 years later, he pleaded guilty to having an unauthorized firearm. However, his most serious legal problems began in 1996 when he was accused of murder related to a gang member's death that was supposedly connected to his vehicle. Throughout this tough time, the spotlight was always on him. However, Snoop managed to have all the charges dropped, leaving many fans wondering if there was wrongdoing that went unpunished. Snoop Dogg continued being caught up in many legal troubles over the years, especially in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Nicki Swift said, "By the end of the 90s and middle of the 2000s, Snoop Dogg would see 6 more arrests, several on drug and firearm possession, an implication in a rape case which was later dropped, and both a ban from the United Kingdom and a denial of entry into Australia." Even though he's still a major figure in music, Snoop Dogg keeps trying new things. He's a brilliant businessman, and his net worth shows he knows how to make money. He's a big fan of marijuana and started his own cannabis business called Casa Verde. Snoop Dogg also created a website called Mary Jane, where he talks about the marijuana industry. He shares info about different types of marijuana and where to buy it, which his fans seem to like a lot. In 2005, Snoop started his own production company called Snoopadelic Films. Through this, he uses movies to share his interests and personal stories. He also teamed up with Martha Stewart. They got a lot of attention for their show, Martha and Amp Snoop's Potluck Dinner Party. Snoop didn't stop there. He also got into the alcohol business. He launched his wines and gins called 19 Crimes and Indago. In addition to his music career, he's been in various TV shows and lent his voice to animated films like The Addams Family, Turbo, and the SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run. If you like this video, just tap the card on your screen now to watch more videos about the hip-hop scene.